Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at the 2016 AP Computer Science A free response question, specifically question 2 part C. If you haven't read the question, I suggest you pause and read the question and ideally actually try the question. You always want to try these questions before someone else goes through them. So what we're doing in this question is we are implementing this instance method which is contained within the system log class. Now what they're trying to test you on in this question is, do you understand the basic structure of classes? And specifically I would imagine we have a list of objects. So they want to make sure you understand how to access objects that are part of a list. So what this function is going to do is it's going to remove from the system log all entries whose descriptions properly contain keyword and return a list, possibly empty, containing the removed entries. It's really important when you look at questions like this to take a read of the post conditions because you want to make sure you're not violating any of those. So the post conditions in this case are the entries in the return list properly contain keyword and are in the order in which they appear in the log system. That's a really important point, the fact that they're in the order that they appear in the log system. And I have a couple approaches to this problem that look at how to manage this, because if you do try and with this question, you're going to end up removing elements from a list, and typically you learn to do that from the end of the list to the start because it has to do with shifting indexes and such. But if you do that in this case, you have to be careful in terms of maintaining the original order, and we'll talk about that when we look at the coded solution. The remaining entries in the system log do not properly contain keyword and are in the original order, and the return list is empty if no message properly contains keyword. So again, down here we have a nice little example to take a look at, and just to summarize it, if this is my message list right here, there's my original message list. When I call the log remove message disk, and so the keyword I'm looking for is disk, it would return a list containing these. So notice this is the new list that contains web server, disk offline, server 2, and notice that the order web server, there's the web server, server 2, server 2, server 1, server 1. And then this is what should be in the list when it's done. And again, the important piece here is that the order is maintained. Here it is. So let's take a look at the code. So here's my system log class. So I'm going to let's start by talking about the actual question, and then I'll kind of scroll up and talk about some other things, or maybe make another video. So here's the function that we've written. I use the term function and method interchangeably, partly because I'm doing a lot of coding right now in Python. So just use that word interchangeably. So here we go. So one way to do this is first thing we have to do is we have to create a new array list. So here's my new array list, and this is the list that's going to store the removed logs, and this is what we're going to return. Now I'm going to start by looking down here at solution 2. So solution 2 is a pretty straightforward way to do it. What you're going to do is you're going to write a loop, and that loop is going to increment through every element in the list, and then you're going to access, so you're going to say you're going to get the list item, and then you're going to run the function contain words with the keyword. Now if you remember, we actually wrote the function contain words in one of the previous questions. It's very important here that you don't reinvent the wheel, so to speak. You want to use that function, and that is what they're looking for. If you had no idea how to do the other question, or you had a lot of problems with it, you're going to assume it works correctly. And that's really important. So if we just jump into log message here really quickly, you'll notice that contain words is a Boolean, and therefore this is going to evaluate to a true or false statement. If it evaluates to true, that means this specific log message that we've gotten contains it, so we're going to add to our new list the message, the specific element, pardon me. Now again, this is really leveraging a useful technique. This is doing two things at once. It is removing the log message from, come up here just to look at the name, from our message list. So this is removing the log message from, line this up, from message list. And since the remove function returns the object that is being removed, we can pass it right into the add function, the add method. Again, this is a nice little piece with the remove. A lot of people will do this in 2 steps. What they'll do is they'll actually get it, store it in some temporary object, then remove it, and then add it or something along those lines. Now this is a big idea. Since we are moving through the list from start to end, when we remove an object, all the indexes to the right of the object change, or all the elements to the right of the object, let's say all the elements to the right of the object change indexes. So you have to be really careful when you're doing this, because you can actually end up skipping objects in your inspection. And if you want to kind of look at a more detailed version of this, you can take a look at my YouTube channel, and I have a specific video on array lists. So what we're doing is we're rolling back the counter by 1, because when I remove an object, that object disappears, but everything shifts in to fill that space. So this is really important. So if I come in here and give this a run, so here's my original log. Let's scroll this up a little bit. And then what we can do is maybe we can position this to see both at the same time. There we go. There's my original log. There's my original log. I've actually written a main method in here to test it. Here's my removed log. There's my removed log with the order maintained. And there's the original log state when I'm done. And there's a new system log, I called it. Now, another way to go about this problem is what we could do here. And I'm just going to comment this all out. I'm going to comment this in. This is the other way to do it. So this is another way to approach it. So if you decided to actually remove, if you've kind of gone through the thought process of, I have to remove an object from a list, so I'm going to start at the end of the list and go to the start, that's okay, but you have to be really careful, because you're going to end up with a complete reverse order in terms of your new log. So all that we have to remember here is that when we add to the list, we have to actually use this version of the add function, which actually you indicate a location. So we're always going to add every object we're finding, we're going to add it at index 0. And what that's kind of doing is maintaining that order. I have an error here, and I imagine it's because I haven't returned my list. Let's put that. There we go. Oh, in theory, let me pause that and find this error. Sorry about that. I have so many versions here that I got mixed up in my commenting. So again, you just have to make sure you're working with that. The AP Computer Science exam, if you know, provided that you've learned the content, it's not an extremely challenging exam, except for the fact that there's a lot of little details you got to watch for. And so really pay attention to these as you go through. So if we give this a run, let's just make sure it works okay. And there we go, it works the same way. What we can see again, if we scroll over, there's my original log, which matches my original log. Here's my new system log. There's my new system log. Here's my removed log. There's my removed log. So in order to make this question run, I had to add a lot of code into this. And what I think I'll do in my last video on this specific question is I'll go through the other kind of things I've added in. Might as well take a point to say this is I think it's worth taking a look specifically at how I've implemented the toString method in here, because often you'll run into a toString method on the exam, and they're good ones to make sure you practice going into it. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and have a wonderful day.